सो द क्वेश्चन इज अबाउट फॉरगिवनेस. आजकल ट्रेंडिंग टॉपिक है. अच्छी चीज है. इट्स अ गुड थिंग. द गीता स्पीक्स अबाउट फॉरगिवनेस एज वन ऑफ द दैवी क्वालिटी, क्षमा. पर जैसे कई चीजें हैं जो बड़ी सुंदर होती हैं विचारों में, पर उनको करना कठिन होता है क्योंकि हम उसकी मैकेनिज्म नहीं जान पाते हैं. जैसे एक होता है लेट गो ऑफ द पास्ट. तो अब हाउ डू यू लेट गो ऑफ द पास्ट? यू कांट लेट गो ऑफ द पास्ट जस्ट बाय दिस थॉट. द बेस्ट वे इज टू मूव टू द फ्यूचर. इफ यू रियली लुक एट इट, तो धीरे धीरे वो पास्ट पीछे में चलता चला जाता है. द सेकेंड इज टू अंडरस्टैंड इट इन द न्यू लाइट एंड द ट्रू लाइट. पास्ट हॉन्ट करता है जब तक हम उसको एक रीइवैल्यूएट नहीं करते हैं, एक नए प्रकाश में नहीं देखते हैं. तो ऐसे ही कुछ फॉरगिवनेस के साथ है. एक होती है फॉरगिवनेस जहाँ बाहर से हम कहते हैं कि क्षमा कर दिया, लेकिन हृदय में फांस अटकी रहती है. देयर इज दिस थॉर्न इन द फ्लैश विच इज ऑल द टाइम देयर. So much so that you don't want to go near the person, you don't want to see the sight of the person. I have met people, even today, that if I go near that building, I feel something. It is there. So this is the state of humanity. So what are the movements that complement and give us the capacity to forgive? Certainly to forgive with a sense of superiority is not the right thing. It is like you are landing in a, oh, I forgive you. You are a sinner. You should be punished, but I have forgiven. It's a vanity, nothing else. It fans our vanity. And we are not talking of that kind of forgiveness. Nor are we talking of that kind of tolerance, which is another word these days. Where inside you have all the swords and daggers drawn, but outside you are tolerating it. Tolerance is one of the, it's actually a word which is condescending. Just imagine if somebody tells you, I tolerate you. Are you happy about it? Somebody tells you that I tolerate you. How would you like? You say, please don't tolerate me. Tell me to get out. That's far more frank than tolerating me. So, but how to do that? It comes, first thing we must acquire is wideness. You cannot forgive if one is narrow. Narrow, the more narrow we are, the more we are holding on to the strong armor of the ego. Which part cannot forgive? The sense of an outer ego personality. I am married to this man or I am married to this lady. Now, I possess her. One of the biggest problem is that we live with this idea of possessing people, possessing land, possessing property. So we have this idea of being snatched away. All this comes from a extreme narrowness of the ego individuality. This is mine. So I have a right over it. And the other person has to behave, do this, do that, completely according to my needs, demands and expectations. This is one extreme. Then there are many shades, because of which what hurts us. To forgive means something has hurt me. What has hurt me? The moment a person does not live or speak or follow according to my idea of what one should do, I am hurt. Then I take a superior attitude and I say, I forgive you. Arey, this is very strange. You are leading life on a false premise. Nobody is here to please you. See, there can be such a joyous relationship, happy, healthy, harmonious, if we get rid of this idea. So anyways, now one is hurt, so one has to see what is hurt. It is the state of the ego which falsely identifies itself with the personality of a moment, with a mood of the moment. And therefore it holds that. Let us say somebody has got angry. So we see that small little moment and remember, you got angry. The person may do 100 beautiful things. So what happens is that we narrow down to that one little spot rather than seeing the totality and the larger picture. That's what people do when they pass a judgment on Rama. सीता का त्याग दिया, सीता को ही abandoned. Now, I've spoken of this incidents in several places, but I'm just saying, look at Mata Sita, how she responded to the whole thing. It comes out when she talks about the story of Rama to Love Kush. What does she tell him? Oh, he abandoned me? She tells him, you know, Rama, he comes all the way to Lanka to fight this mighty Daman. Nobody could take that challenge. Why did he come? Out of love. Now you see, when you see the total perspective, then you understand that, well, there is another logic which is operating and not the logic that we look. So when we look at things, people, everything in totality. So how do we look in totality? If we discover something beautiful within us, we discover that beauty in the other person. For instance, somebody who has found the soul. So one will spontaneously know that regardless of the surface anger, there is this psychic element and that is always full of love. Mother says so beautifully, bitterness is on the surface, but the soul is always full of love. And then she says something very interestingly, bitterness melts away under the sunshine of love just as butter melts under the sun. So you spontaneously know that, well, it's unfortunate that the person is not able to recognize his or her own soul, but it is there. It's not that the person is devoid of that. And the soul makes only one response, it's of love. It doesn't know anything, it doesn't know hatred, wickedness. These are not attributes of the soul. So when we discover it, we become spontaneously, we are able to see behind appearances. Then when we struggle with our own self, then we become tolerant. Sunny tolerance. This is a different tolerance. It's not the tolerance of the superior. You mlech, I tolerate you. No. You have struggled with your own difficulties. So you understand. The mother has used the word, then you develop a generous and sunny tolerance. You know it's not easy. It's easy to condemn somebody, oh, you are anger prone. But you see, I may not have the problem for anger, I may have something else. Everybody has their own issues. And when you work upon one difficulty inside, then you know how difficult it is. So you develop a generous and sunny tolerance. So there comes tolerance and generosity. So another quality that is needed to really forgive is generosity. There are some people who are by nature givers. So they don't calculate what I gave and how much you have returned. They are givers by nature. There are others who are takers. It's very strange. Normally takers should be easy to forgive, but it's just the other way around. So I often use this as a kind of joke, a bit of touch of humor. When you have nothing, you want just a little. Bhagwan bas itna de dena. Itna hi dena Swami. When he gives a little, you want a little more. Then he gives you a little more. Then you want more, much more. When he gives you much more, then you want more and more. See, it is strange. Whereas those who are givers, they have a different attitude. Even they have little, they love to give. Even a little of that little. And therefore they are happy. They can easily forgive. So this become a giver, consciously a giver. And there is another very interesting physical logic to it. Have you seen that a beggar has his hands always raised up from below? His hands are below. And a giver's hands are always above. When you give, you automatically ascend to a higher and higher level. So it's important to cultivate generosity. Conscious generosity. Start with animals, start with plants. Learn from them. They are so generous. In nature, everybody is generous except human beings. Really, you see, it's so amazing. Nadiya na chakhe kabhi apna jal. Vraksh na chakhe kabhi apna phal. You see, they are so generous. It's there inbuilt in nature. It gives, sun gives, all the time. Rivers flow and you drink. It doesn't question. Flowers, mother says, look at a flower and learn from a flower. It just spreads its beauty and fragrance everywhere. It doesn't say, oh, no, you can't deserve my fragrance. Be away. Out, out. It doesn't say that. So we can learn from nature. Meditate upon nature. It will teach us generosity. Look at animals. It will teach you how to forgive. I have seen dogs, even when the person who tends them has even hit them, sometimes they get angry. And after 2 minutes, the dog comes back. He is at your feet. He misses you when you are away. This unconditional kind of giving, this what we have to learn from, and we have forgotten because of the, again, mental ego. Very strong sense of that limited individuality. So we need wideness, we need generosity, udarta. We need to develop this idea that whatever be the appearances in human beings, all that is passing, the real stuff is inside. And inside everyone there is beauty, there is love, there is light. Okay, sometimes we may have to fight. I can't stand on the border and tell a Pakistani soldier, you know what, you are full of love. He may be, actually he is. All soldiers are. But I have to fight, but let that fight not be with hatred, anger. I may have to stay the sword of somebody who is an aggressor. But still I must not hate. You cannot hate. The moment you understand that there is in the depth the same truth, you will fight, if necessary, even as in the Gita, slay. And yet there will be no hatred, no anger, because that state. And finally, as we ascend in our consciousness to higher and luminous regions through yoga, we start living in vastness. We start looking at life from a very, very large perspective. We are not driven by the passion of the moment. See, he said this and then, it's okay. So we should start, ultimately, the ultimate remedy is this only, turn everything to feed the fire of yoga. If somebody has hurt you, understand. So understanding and compassion. What is understanding? He is bound by his nature. With that comes compassion. He is only able to hurt. It's a very unfortunate thing. Somebody who cannot love, he is handicapped, no, hearty-capped. New word. Cannot love, poor fellow. People who cannot love suffer a lot inside, He is already suffering. Now you don't want to add to that suffering. He needs more love because he cannot. See, this is how the mother dealt with people, no? Even somebody who throws that rose and, you don't love me, and mother says, she doesn't say, you don't know how much I love you. She doesn't say that. She says, you don't know how much you love me. So turn all things to feed the fire of yoga. Then we will not carry any hurts. They will become luminous grace. They will help us to grow. Then something which has helped you to grow, how can you carry it as a grudge? Because it's something which has helped. You'll start seeing the divine behind everything. As Sri Aurobindo says very beautifully, turn all things to honey. That is the rule of divine living. And to have that compassion, true compassion, not just kindness. Compassion comes when we live in wisdom. Wisdom brings compassion. Because you see human beings, how much they suffer. When you look at a snake, what a miserable life a snake has. The fellow has to slither, hide somewhere, go inside the snake hole. He's unloved. Even if he doesn't have a fang, poor fellow, if he comes, people shun his company. What a miserable life it is. People who don't know how to love, for example, who hurt others, they become so alone and lonely. Not alone. Alone is a strength. But lonely. It's not a good thing. So you develop compassion. That look here, this person is already suffering because of this. He cannot help but hurt. So that brings compassion, that brings wideness, true wisdom, compassion, generosity. When we live by all these movements, then we don't even think about forgiving, because eventually we reach that state where we say, forgive whom and for what? We close with this story of Buddha. Somebody came and got very angry at Buddha, and he shouted and literally spat, and then, went out fuming in anger. Later on, most people, I must tell you, after some time do understand. But the ego prevents you from saying even a sorry. So next day he came, he says, well, I'm sorry that... He said, for what? He said, I got very angry with you. He said, but you are not the same person. He said, but I am the same person. He says, then show me how you got angry again. He says, no. Anger came and took hold of me. He says, then you are not that person. Anger took hold of you. And you acted under a wave of anger. So it was a lesson that Buddha taught. That look here, this is a temporary manifestation. Never lose the permanent for the sake of the temporary. This is the greatest wisdom. So with these cryptic lines, Namaste.